Miami. This is Dr. John Bennett presenting another in the series of Radiologist TV. Today we have Imran Kurasi, MD. He's going to talk about 3D printing and 3D printing in medicine. And now I'm going to turn the show over to Fike Sheikh. Good evening, Fike. Well, good afternoon, Fike.
Yeah, thanks, John. Hi, everyone. My name is Fike Sheikh. I'm the co-CEO and creative director here at Radiologist.tv, and a molecular imaging physician by profession. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Imran Qureshi, who is the abdominal imaging and informatics fellow at the prestigious University of Maryland Medical Center in Baltimore. He also is the informatics contributor here at Radiologist.tv. Today, Dr. Qureshi is going to be talking about 3D printing in medical space. It's a very interesting topic. It's getting a lot of attention these days, and we're happy to have him here to talk on that topic. So welcome to the show, Dr. Qureshi.
Thank you so much. Let me just go ahead and get this started. Thank you for that welcome. Yeah, like you were saying, 3D printing in the medical space is a hot topic. There's a lot of stuff going on right now in 3D printing, and a lot of new ideas coming out there, but not much has solidified yet into any large companies. So kind of the objective of this presentation is to give you a good background of 3D printing, how it all works, and what I really want to do is showing you, what is going on out there in the medical space, is also give you the tools so that tomorrow you can go out and do your own project. Because the more we have this in the media, the more we have people doing this, the more we have people showing their clinicians what can be done with 3D printing. More this can be out there to help patients. So again, just basically a brief history. We'll go through the tech of 3D printing, the supplies that you need before you start a print, current uses. I'll show some of the interesting things in the non-medical space, but we'll concentrate on the medical space, what's out there, and then we'll end by a little step-by-step how-to, and then I'll do a little show and tell on different things that we've done over here at Maryland. So a brief history of 3D printing. So it's actually been out there for quite a while. The main thing is that it's been kind of hidden in the not in the consumer space, more in the manufacturing space. It was actually in '84 that handsome-looking gentleman on the left with the mustache is Charles Hull. He actually developed the first patent for 3D printing, stereolithography, using UV light to cure a resin. We'll go through that a little bit more in detail. In '89, fused deposition modeling was developed by Scott Crump and also patented. They both have now their own companies, and FDM is actually what's now in the consumer space. So ever since it came out in '09, the first printer, BFB Rapman, it's been exploding. At first people were just doing art things with it, but then it people realized that there's a lot more functionality in there. And actually it started in '07 when a company, Shapeways, first created an online company where you can send them your file and they'll print it for you. But then right after that, in '09, BFB Rapman came out. And so that machine there on the right is, I think, the third generation of the BFB Rapman, but it looked similar to that. So just a little bit about the tech behind 3D printing, because it's kind of vital to know exactly what's going on, how the tech works before you start a 3D print, or just to understand what's possible and what's not possible. So what is 3D printing? Just in general, 3D printing is something we call additive manufacturing. So there's two ways to manufacture something, a 3D object. One is by sculpting it, which is you start off with a big block, and with lasers or sculpting tools, you chip away parts of it, right? So you're breaking it down into the object you want. What 3D printing does is the opposite. Is additive manufacturing. So all 3D printing methods, there's maybe 6 or 7 of them, 3 popular ones, basically go layer by layer, depositing or somehow curing one layer at a time, and moving up or moving down or sideways. But it does one layer at a time, and so it's added. It's an additive process. So the three types of 3D printers out there that are the most popular. First let me start with stereolithography. Down there in the left corner is what we call stereolithography. This is the first one that was patented in the 80s. So how this works is that you have this liquid resin there, and then you have the plate kind of submerged in the resin. A laser with UV light cures one layer of material, and it turns into a solid plastic. And the bed sinks down just a little bit, so just one little layer of resin can go over the previously produced layer. And so, then whatever the next layer is, it cures that and it goes down. So it's slowly sinking in this resin, and it's making that object where it's making that chest piece over there. Then selective laser sintering. It's what we see there on the right side. Very similar process, except there's not resin. It's actually a powder. It's powdered metal. There's more than one type, and how exactly they're polymerized is a little different, a little more detail than we need to go into, but it's similar. Where you have a build chamber, and you have a bed there, and with laser it fuses one layer at a time, and it slowly moves down, so that you can build the whole object. It's actually those things. Both of these have very high resolution. However, they're also very, very expensive. They're not, they're cost restrictive right now for the regular consumer. What we can do is fuse deposition modeling. Like what I showed here. This is more of a fused deposition modeling technique, where you have plastics that are extruded by an extruder. Basically, just a hot little nozzle there that plastic goes through, and it melts it, and it knows exactly where to deposit it layer by layer, and it also moves down. The only difference, the pros and cons. FDM is much cheaper. I think the cheapest printer that I've seen is about $800, but I think they're getting even cheaper. Probably the kind of the Cadillac of FDM right now is the MakerBot Replicator 2X, which is about $3,000 or $2,800. So it's more in a range of being affordable. The filaments are not that expensive either. So that's what what most people use. That's what we've used in our projects and stuff, and it's good for prototyping something. So just to show you what a 3D printer looks like, this is the MakerBot Replicator 2X. It's basically the same one that we use in our projects. You have the filament feeder on top. That's where the filaments go in. They're basically types of plastic that will be extruded. This one, and the one that we've used, has two extruder heads. So that's one current limitation of 3D printing. There's only one method, porcelain, that can have more than one color. But the majority of 3D printing, you can only print in one color. They are developing some in the future that have more than two heads, so you can do more than one color. But right now, this is one of the limitations. The reason that there's two filaments is because one is actually for support struts, which will be chipped away, dissolved away, and the other one is for your actual material. Then you have the extruders that get hot. You have the printing bed, which is also hot and moves down as each layer is made. Then, of course, you have the control panel down there on the left where you input everything. You have your SD card. It's all encapsulated in plastic because it has to keep a certain tolerance for heat. Small tolerance for the variability to keep everything smooth. Because if some prints can take 10, 20 hours, and if one layer gets messed up, if there's a little glop there that comes out, it can ruin the whole thing because it just keeps on translating up. So the last technical piece I want to talk about is the actual data that you need for your 3D printer. So it's a STL file. That's the most popular file type. I think there's one or two printers that might have a more proprietary type, but most of them use .stl, which is a stereolithography file. They are different from CAD files. That's important to note because CAD files have the entire voxel data. CAD file, you can have teeth, and you can have the architecture inside the teeth and all the different layers. STL file is actually just surface geometry, so it's going to be a much smaller file, but you don't have all the intro structure. So it's just a surface geometry because that's what's going to be printed. And so all the stuff that's inside, and this is one of the things you have to keep in mind when you are making an STL file. You have to make the insides all hollow. Because it can't print. It can't print the space inside your object. Another thing is you have to make sure you don't have any non-manifold geometry, which basically means it has to be airtight or water. They call it a water seal. So no edges are touching each other with just one point or one face. And then again, with at least the FDM type of printing, if you can't have overhanging edges that are more than 45 degrees. If you do, so for example, if you're printing a upside down, like a roof on a house, and you can't have this hang out in space, so what the printer will do is it will create struts here by itself, so it will waste a lot more plastic, again dissolvable plastic, so that you can have that strut. But as long as you are 45 degrees, you can print it without having extra struts. Other little thing you can do is you can make custom struts so that you don't have to mess with the dissolvable plastic. So just let's go over the supplies that are needed when you do a 3D print. Again, I'm concentrating on the FDM because that's kind of what's most available and easiest for most people to do. So there's two types of filaments. There's the polylactic acid and the ABS, and they're a little different. So the PLA is much more fragile. It's not as heat resistant. So if you have it in a very hot place, it can start melting. But is biodegradable, right? So you can throw it away and not feel too guilty about it. It's best for if you have objects that you don't for display that you don't want people to touch all the time, but you just want to put somewhere to display. It does actually have a little bit smoother texture. ABS, however, is slightly malleable, so it kind of bends. It's good for moving parts. It's not fragile. I mean, it's still plastic, so you can still snap it, but it's like manufactured plastic. It's more heat resistant, so it can be out there in the sun. But only thing, again, it's non-biodegradable. But these are basically best if you are printing something to actually use. These will hold up a little better. So just quickly, so other supplies you need an SD card for file transfer from your computer to the 3D printer. You need some regular hand tools like a paint scraper, craft blades, wire cutter, and small pliers, because as I said, you have the main filament and then you have the dissolvable filament that will print, and you gotta basically, when you get your 3D print out, it will be encrusted in this white dissolvable filament, and you need to use wire cutter and whatnot to remove as much as you can. But then after you do that, you dissolve it in oil, orange terpene, and that dissolves the rest of the dissolvable filament. And also, just a helpful hint is duct tape on the printer bed helps things from sticking to it. Easier to get your 3D print off. Okay, so a little bit more of the fun part. Let's look at some of the non-medical uses, and then we'll go into some of the medical uses of 3D printing. Again, as with everything in technology, medicine is usually a little behind. So some of these non-medical uses are have a little bit more of a wow factor right now. So games, art, design. People make figurines right now. Some people just modern art. People create with 3D printing. design. There are companies out there who prototyping architecture and whatnot, building and stuff like that. Will use 3D printing to show their customers how a certain building or what will show. So this company, Zillet Miniatures, makes miniatures for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or whatever type of game you're playing. It's used in fashion, so this is actually pretty cool. So these are wearable shoes right here. This company Continuum. What's actually very cool is I forgot what the name of the company is, but there is Electrolume. So there's a company called Electrolume that is making a 3D printer that prints fabric, which is pretty amazing. So you'll be able to print your own shirts and stuff at home. But in jewelry with another thing, also rapid prototyping. So sometimes you can either make watches or iPhone cases straight from your 3D printer, or you can make it so it's prototyped, so that then they can make sure they know how it looks, and then they can make a mold for it. This is also pretty cool. Food. So food is getting 3D printed now. So this company, Natural Machines, is releasing, I think, I'm not sure if it's already out or it's coming out at the end of this year, a 3D printer called Foodini, which can 3D print food. So they have different chambers. So basically, you have your ingredient list. They have different chambers. You just put it in there. It emulsifies it and heats it up, and it prints out a pizza or lasagna or whatever you're hungry for, which I think is really amazing, really cool. The other thing, what's out there now is kind of large scale and distance manufacturing. So a company, Local Motors, has recently, I forgot, the North American Motor Show or something to that nature, just recently printed out a large scale car. So the whole body of that car, I think it was like 20 some pieces that they glued together, but it was printed, and they printed it while they're at the auto show, and it drives around and it's a fully functional car, which is pretty amazing. Distance manufacturing. So when NASA, when they went up to repair some things on the International Space Station recently, they sent a schematic or a STL file for a certain type of socket wrench, which they had a zero gravity 3D printer up in space, and they were able to print it and use it to fix the whatever socket was not working up there. So some more stuff. Now let's move into the medical space. What's out there? So there's a lot with custom prosthetics. So this is one company, 3D Systems. Well, they just bought it. I forgot the original name, but they just bought this company where they make custom prosthetics. So one thing in medicine is that a lot of times when people have, for some reason they have to get amputated, right? Peripheral vascular disease or whatnot. We always have certain sites, either AKA, BKA, certain places. And the reason we do that, is because the prostheses that are out there currently are only for those levels, right? So if someone's half of his calf is fine, we still will amputate them just below the knee because there's no half calf prosthesis. But with custom prostheses, there's the future of preserving more of your limb, and getting better ergonomics, or even customizing how it looks for these prostheses. Let's see. So there's also here we have the reconstruction of the skull. What's the name of this company? Let's see. Yeah, it's OsteoFab. So OsteoFab is a company that's now printing titanium reconstructive plates for the skull. So there's been, if you just Google search OsteoFab or cranial titanium reconstruction, you'll see plenty of different hospitals. China, I think one just recently here, I forgot exactly where, maybe Wake Forest or Hopkins, where the pediatric patient who was repaired, similar to this, where they could put a titanium plate in there exactly how it makes it look like fine. They don't have to make that hole any bigger or anything. They don't have to make the ostomy any bigger. Um, Another thing they're using now, actually this is out there and used by a lot of dentists, is 3D printing for crowns and plates. They just take a short CT scan or tomography of your mouth, and then they can see exactly where to put plates, and it's a custom fit for you. So here is another company, which is this is kind of crazy to me. This is a company or Organovo, which is printing actual tissue. So this is liver tissue. It's not implantable into a human. However, for drug toxicity, you can get liver tissue printed and see how it deals with drug toxicity. But it's still relatively new, but these are things that people are doing out there. This is probably operative science. This is probably what is one of the first things that people did in medicine with 3D printing, and it's probably the thing that many hospitals are actually doing now. So, a lot of pediatric cardiac anomalies are very complicated, and no matter how many times you look at the CT and MR, there's nothing beats just actually holding it in your hand and being able to dissect it before you open the kid's chest up, and you're on a time limit, right? So what they're doing is originally just with CT data, and more recently, I think one company actually has done it with MR data, is print out the pediatric heart. That way the pediatric cardiac surgeon can go through it and see exactly what needs to be changed, what needs to be switched, and that way when they go into surgery, they're not surprised. This is being used not just this is one of the main use cases out there right now, but people are using this for fractures, for prosthesis placement. Again, like I said, reconstructive surgery, facial fractures. There's a lot out there for operative planning. So those are kind of the uses that I've found in medicine. There are some other things that are kind of in the research stage currently, but every day someone's coming out with a new paper with something else going on. So again, this is probably the most exciting part for me of this presentation, is kind of teaching you guys how to 3D print, because there's plenty of ideas. A lot of people don't know where to find a 3D printer. You can either buy one, again, like I said, $800 to $3,000 for a decent one that you can buy. The way that we did most of our projects is our medical library actually bought one. No one really knew about it. I'm not really sure why. They just bought it just to keep it, and just randomly I saw it one day and I was like, hey, are we allowed to use that? And so it's much cheaper, because if you print a 3D print and you get someone else to print it for you, it's I'll show you my slab that I had. It was about 6 inches by 4 inches by 1 cent, half an inch, and that was $8 to print. But when I asked a company to print it, they were charging me $100. So it's much cheaper if you can find your own printer or have your own printer. And there's plenty of ideas out there. It'd be fun if someone started doing different things. So the first thing to do is acquire the data, right? So right now, if it's your first 3D print, probably the easiest way and probably the most comfortable way, us being in medicine, is to go to the National Institute of Health 3D Printing Exchange. It's a repository of STL files, which you could literally just download and plug it into your 3D printer. It'll start printing, and they're all anatomically correct. So they're all from CT data. So that's one good place to start. There's Thingiverse, which is probably the #1 non-medical repository for STLs. But if you just go online, type in STL repository, 3D printing repository, there's plenty of repositories out there. Another way to get the data, you can scan objects. So if you look at a picture in the middle, it's actually from MakerBot. It's a 3D scanner, which has a plate in the middle. It rotates, and they have a scanner on 2 sides, so you can scan all kinds of different objects. They also make handheld scanners as well. Or what you can do is you can create your STL with software. So, if you're in the medical space, programs such as Philips IntelliSpace, Terra Recon, and there's other ones out there can do the trick. You know, you can take CT data, MR data, do MIPS of them, you know, and you can export them as a mesh or STL, and there you go. If you want to use other programs such as 3D Code, 3ds Max, ZBrush, you can build 3D images from scratch that way as well. So that's how you acquire your data. Next, you know, you have to set up your printer. You have to calibrate your printer every so often, especially when you first get it. Make sure the printer bed is leveled. The reason you do all these checks is because some of these jobs are like 10, 11 hours, and if one thing is off, it can just make one bubble in the filament and ruin your whole print, and then you've wasted a day and wasted a bunch of filament. So you have to make sure, you know, each time the printing bed is level, there's enough filament, make sure it's loaded, and the extruders are not clogged up, and make sure the printer comes up to heat before you send the print off. So for the data, what you have to do is you have to run it through. Well, what you should do is run it through MeshLab. It's an open source program that's out there that makes sure that there's no non-manifold geometry. Again, so that it will actually print properly. So manifold geometry is when two or more planes share one corner. So like a T would be manifold geometry. You can't print that because these are not actually touching when it's doing 3D printing. And then the program itself will have a slicer program where you put in the STL file there, and it will make sure it can actually print it. It'll make a new type of file that you're going to put straight to your SD card and into the printer. But what this program does, this slicer program, is it gets all the layers exactly what the printer has to do. So SD card into the printer, and you begin. So this is one of the prints I did. Let's see if it works here. So this is the maker box printing a axial CT scan, or CT slab rather. Like the white stuff there, that's a lot of the trusses that can be dissolved away. The actual blue stuff is the actual filament. And so this 3D head 3D print just keeps on going and prints layer by layer, and then that bed with each subsequent layer goes down about 1 millimeter. The resolutions change. Most resolutions are about 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters. With this type of 3D printing, you can actually see a little stair stepping with the powder, the different other types that we talked about. Those are much higher quality imaging, and that's another thing that we learned was that you only need your file to be as high resolution as you can print. There's no reason to have a 0.01 millimeter resolution STL file if you can only print at 0.1. So then again, post processing, sometimes it's very large, print. You have to glue them together like that car. You can paint things, but again, they're only one color, so sometimes you have to paint things. Sandpaper that's misspelled, to what do you call it? Smooth it out. You can also use a heated acetone vapor bath to smooth it out. Also, there's a lot of images on the web on exactly how to do that. So then, what do you do? You're done, right? So this was my first 3D print. So this is data from a CT scan of the pelvis. So what's cool is that this is not like a model or artist rendering of a pelvis. This is actually someone's actual pelvis. I think that's pretty remarkable, pretty cool. So just a little show and tell though. Like, this is something I just presented recently at the New York Medical Imaging Informatics Symposium. One thing we did was that we saw the need for clinicians to better understand CT data. In medical school, we operate, or we dissect in an anatomy lab, but a lot of times the visual space that we get there doesn't translate to axial data. So this concept we had was to segment out the entire human body using the NIH Visible Human Project. They have CT data for us, and then print multiple slabs that are stackable. That way you can see the axial skeleton or the axial anatomy, but as well as know where it is in the Z plane. And so that's something that we did just a while ago. And that's all I have. If you guys have any questions, that'd be great.
Thanks, Dr. Qureshi. That was an excellent talk, and clearly there's a lot. I was just thinking about how 3D printing can be used in different aspects of medicine and more specifically medical imaging. And not a whole lot comes to mind when I think about my own field, which is nuclear medicine and molecular imaging. But I think it may have more application in abdominal imaging, which is your domain. And then, of course, same question goes to Dr. Awan when it comes to MSK. So what are your guys' thoughts on that?
No, definitely. I think, like I said, there's a lot going on right now in prosthetics. For example, we have one of my attendings over here is doing a project on printing different, well, he's already published, printing the scapula. That way, people who need a prosthesis, they can actually see how the glenoid fossa is shaped, and it helps them better develop a certain prosthetic for it. So there's multiple ways of using 3D printing.
You know, one thing I want to share with you guys is something I saw this morning, and I posted on Internet Medicine, and it applies actually both to radiology and 3D printing. Mm-hmm. This is a 3D printing of a child in utero with a cleft palate. Yeah. And what I thought of, maybe I can ask you guys, is that how good is ultrasound at diagnosing something like a cleft palate in utero? Do you need 3D printing for that? Do you guys know anything about that?
Well, I mean, I know when you use 3D ultrasound, it's a little bit easier to pick up, but no, I don't really read like second, third trimester ultrasounds. So I'm not 100% sure how hard it is.
Okay, well, apparently they're having success with 3D printing, like printing it out, just like you said, from a MRI.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one thing that I did in the past was get 4D or 3D images from ultrasound and actually etch it into a crystal. This is before I knew about 3D printing, which is very similar to this, where you can see different anomalies a lot better with 3D printing. A lot of this goes along with the whole surgical planning. So once you can hold the actual anomaly in your hand, it makes it easier. It can decrease your operative time when you go in and you already know what an anomaly is. You're not fooled by any tricks, right? I mean, I think there are some unanswered questions. One big one is who pays? Some of these things cost a lot of money, right? Who right now, insurance companies won't pay for 3D printing. Not any that I know of, at least. So that's a big question out there. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much research has been done showing that it has a considerable, it considerably reduces operative times and all this thing. I know there's a lot of smaller studies, but I don't think there's any large definitive studies that would push an insurance company or the government to actually start paying for 3D printing. But everyone's excited about it. So it's one of those things where I know some orthopods who almost demand 3D printing, but no one pays for it. So then the hospital has to eat it.
Yeah.
Sure. Dr. Awan, any thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, thank you, first of all, Imran, for such a wonderful and fabulous talk on 3D printing. I think certainly it has a lot of applications with, cosmetic surgery, preoperative planning, and I think from a standpoint of musculoskeletal or emergency radiology, classifying fractures like complex fractures such as, Lefort fractures or acetabular fractures, as you mentioned already. My question to you was, can you give listeners an idea of, the time frame it takes to sort of do this, and how long does it take, and B, is it applicable, in a radiology setting, for example, in a busy emergency trauma radiology service where we're reading, maybe 100 studies a night? Would it be applicable to do this in a timely fashion without getting behind when you're reading them? It says to classify, acetabular fractures better or Lefort fractures better.
No, definitely. I don't think this is it's not fast enough for making a diagnosis of anything. A lot of it is more for, I think it's still in the realm of pre-surgical planning. So, for example, if you have a complex acetabular fracture, it's anterior and posterior, whatever. You have to just do that through imaging, because printing. For example, this, I don't know if you can see it here, but this sacrum took about 11 hours to print. Right?
Oh, wow.
You can't be waiting 11 hours for a tiny piece of thing to print, right? Most of it's and then making prosthetics. It's not. It gets faster and faster every year. 3D printing. Maybe there'll be a time where you can just print out stuff and make a diagnosis, better. And sometimes, we see that too. Sometimes we will read a scan, we'll make our diagnosis, but then the orthopod, before they go into surgery, they want a 3D reconstruction, not a print, but actual 3D reconstruction. So, it might work out that way where, there is a 5-hour delay where it can be printed. But again, for which ones, and we're going to do all the medical waste. Are you going to throw all these away? Some of them are, as I said, the one type is biodegradable, the other type is not. You just, and if you do that for every person with a fracture, that would be considerable medical waste out there.
Right. One thing you did mention about how it can be applied in tissue engineering, where now that is an interesting domain, because there is a lot of focus on how instead of carrying out long clinical trials, they're trying to sample human tissues and see how different agents, be it radiopharmaceuticals or regular pharmaceuticals or environmental toxins, what kind of impact they have on what could be a representative set of human tissues. So yeah, it looks like 3D printing can help us in that too.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, I tried to understand exactly what they're doing, but truthfully, I'm not exactly sure how they're making that work. It sounds pretty amazing what they're doing. I don't know if it can ever get to a place where we can make organs. I mean, I don't know how you would, the vasculature, all that stuff would work, but one thing Wake Forest is doing is they've found a way to, it's like this, they 3D print an organic substance that acts like cartilage and is very porous. So someone who's an ear, they can print an ear. It's not plastic, it's this organic type material that's porous, and they can place it there, and then your body will actually fill in the hole so it stays in place.
Wow. Yeah, it almost looks like, you take 3D printing, all that 3D printing can do, and then you take stem cells, and the only missing piece is like how to create the microenvironment, and all of a sudden you are in at the next level. But this is fascinating stuff. And John or Dr. Awan, do you have any more questions?
Just a couple of comments. Yeah, thank you for an excellent presentation. And this certainly is a growing field. I've talked to some labs where they say part of the equipment of the lab now is a 3D printer to get parts for the machines, etc. I know it's not medical, but it's more like an industrial type of application.
Yeah.
One lab person said, yeah, we have a 3D printer. If something breaks down, we print out the part and fix it.
Yeah, it makes everything a lot. I mean, it's something that, I mean, it's been around for a while. I mean, actually, since the mid '80s. So it didn't get popular until probably the early '90s. So it hasn't been around for too long. So, but what's been driving all this is that now that it's in the consumer space, and 2008-9 when the first one came out, and now there's all these 3D printing enthusiasts out there just printing away, because you can, people are wearing there's whole shirts and stuff, like there's people wearing costumes and all kinds of different things with 3D printing.
Yeah, one thing I do know is that I don't want to wait 11 hours for my pizza.
One last question to Fike is: have you ever had 3D printed food?
No.
Has anybody ever had? Imran, have you ever had?
I have not, but I'm kind of afraid of it. But
Yeah, I
would
wonder
try,
what it tastes like.
I would try it though. No, I mean again, what it is, they have like what they say at least is they have like different reservoirs, and you put in the ingredients, right? So I guess you put like flour in one, water and mushroom in
Okay.
one, and then it somehow emulsifies it and heats it up and
Oh.
prints it out.
Yeah.
Later.
I mean, I know that they would have to be different printers, set of printers, because you can't be using the same printers for glass and plastic and then use the same for cheese, right?
Yeah.
Because that should be pretty carcinogenic.
Yeah, it would be specialized. It's called Houdini. So
Yeah.
I think it's coming out or it just came out. But yeah, I think that'd be fun.
Yeah. Well, again, excellent talk and a lot of interesting discussion, and thank you for that. And we have the tweet board running, so it is likely that we'll have some questions later, and we'll be happy to follow up on that and send them to you, and so that you can answer them if there are any. And you're welcome anytime to come back and give another talk on either something related or something more focused on abdominal imaging. So you're always welcome, and thanks again.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John.